These webinars are kindly sponsored by the Salty Souls, and thank you so much for the sponsorship. And it's a team very close to our hearts, and we want to express our gratitude and for their constant support through the years. With us is Magdalene Papatheodoulou. She's an excellent scientist and has a lot to share regarding marine protected areas and artificial reefs. Magdalene, she completed her master's in marine and freshwater biology with honors of the first class in 2018 from the University of Glasgow. During her academic progression, she was a member of the Head of College Scholars List Scheme, and upon her graduation, she was honored with the Graham Kerr Memorial Prize. Well done, Magdalene. Over the course of her career, she has worked on a number of research and consultancy projects for both the European Union and the private sector. She has participated in many projects and conferences conducted in Cyprus, Scotland, Denmark, Egypt, and Crete. Magdalene has worked in an assortment of research areas, including benthic, epibenthing, which means on the bottom and around the bottom, the sea bottom baseline surveys, anthropogenic impacts on the physiology and behavior of marine organisms, and fishery-induced evolution. Her honor species was focused on the effects of endocrine disrupting compounds on the male benthic shark Galeus melastomos in the Eastern Mediterranean, and her master thesis on the endobiotic communities of marine sponges in Cyprus, Levantine Sea. She completed her PhD. Well done again. Some of us are still trying in 2022, and she currently works at the Department of Fisheries and Marine Research as a manager in the Artificial Reefs Unit. Anyone who has any questions during and after the presentation that Magda will deliver right now, you can write them down in the Q&A section, and we will reply to all of them as soon as Magda finishes her presentation. So Magda, the floor is yours.
So hi everyone, and thank you guys for inviting me to give this presentation. As Christiana said, my name is Dr. Magdalene Papatheodoulou. I currently work at the Department of Fisheries and Marine Research as one of the two managers for the marine protected areas with artificial reefs. And today my presentation will be looking at marine protected areas and artificial reefs, where initially we're going to talk about what marine protected areas are. Then we're going to be looking why would one create a marine protected area. Moving on to what can one find within these areas, the different categories of marine protected areas, and then moving more specifically into Cyprus. So what marine protected areas do we have in Cyprus? Why were they created? Is there anything that we need to know about these areas, any legislation, and so on? And finally, we're gonna zoom in into the marine protected areas with artificial reefs, which is currently what I'm working with. And we're gonna look at each of the areas more specifically, what artificial reefs are, why we use them, and close off with what is the purpose of artificial reefs, more specifically in Cyprus, and their primary and secondary objectives. So I'll start with what marine protected areas are. The European Environmental Agency classified marine protected areas as a geographic distinct zone for which protective objectives are set. Basically, what this means is that the governing body of a country decides, for whatever reason, that they want to demarcate a specific marine area that is within its coasts. Within those areas, they then set specific legislations and rules that everyone that enters within those areas, they have to follow. Protected areas are created for a number of different reasons. I'm just going to give some examples that are most relevant. We have ecosystems of high ecological importance. They can also be created for high biodiversity, or because a specific species that is considered vulnerable or endangered lives within that habitat. We can also create marine protected areas because of the habitat itself. There's also areas created due to cultural heritage and also in order to enhance and improve fish stocks within an area or within a country. Within marine protected areas, some someone that visits a marine protected area, they can also find a number of different organisms. They can identify bacteria, as we can see in the center of the presentation, the picture that I'm currently pointing at. It's a top left picture. You can also find protozoa, which are single-celled organisms, as well as different species of flora, such as algae and plants. So we can see this in the Posidonia meadows in the center of the pictures, as well as at the bottom with the sea turtle. Within these areas, you can also find a range of different marine organisms, ranging from small things such as jellyfish, like the top right corner. We can also find sea turtles, sharks, as well as different species of marine mammals, whether that's dolphins, whales, or seals. We can also find much smaller things, such as organisms that live on the sea floor, such as crabs, corals, sponges, and so on. So the list keeps going based on how far you want to reach. In Cyprus and in general, we have different types of ecosystem that one may protect. We can have sand drifts, like the center of the picture and the right side of the presentation. We have Posidonia meadows. We have hard rocky substrates. You can also have mixed substrates, underwater caves, or even pelagic water bodies. In Cyprus, we're currently protecting all of these different ecosystems according to which MPA you're actually trying to visit or look into. The IUCN categorizes MPAs into 6 main categories based on the reason that an area is created, whether that's to protect the habitat, a cultural heritage, an organism, and so on. The classification also goes based on how much interaction this area have with humans, and up to what levels one can actually enter the MPA and what they can actually find within those areas. So we're just going to go through each of them very briefly, just everyone can have a good idea of what these categories range into. First, we have the strict nature reserves. This is the area where we have the minimum, the least amount of human impact. They're usually, the impact that we have within these areas is for research reasons. These are created due to a level of once a habitat or a species or ecology or an ecosystem is found, is identified, and it needs to be protected at the maximum. Then we have national parks. Here we have more leniency in what humans can actually do. There's a lot more human impact, a lot more human interactions, and there's also a number of different infrastructures that can assist this. However, national parks tend to also have different levels of zonation with different legislations based on what they want to protect. The main reason for national parks is to protect a functioning ecosystem. So they don't just protect one habitat or one species. They take a number of different habitats that work together. There's interconnecting relationships, and they also take the number of different organisms that live within those habitats. So they protect both the habitat and the organisms living within them. Then we have natural monuments. This can be both natural or human influenced. Once you create a marine protected area for a natural monument, you don't just protect the monument. You also need to protect the surrounding habitats so that there is as minimum impact to the monument as possible. Then we have areas that are created because a species or a habitat has been identified as vulnerable, as important, as endangered, and so on. And all the legislation and regulations that are created are based on the protection of that specific species or habitat. Category 5 is the protection of landscapes and seascapes. This has a lot more interaction with local communities. This area again are created because of this, because an environment has been identified of having high ecological, biological, cultural character to the specific country that was created. Lastly, we have the marine protected areas that are created in order to increase a natural resource that is being of use to the people within the country, within the area, and so on. In Cyprus, we have a number of different levels of protection based on the MPA that one is interested in. We have prohibition and regulation of a vessel passage. We also have prohibition and regulation of fishing activities. And lastly, we have establishment of operating regulations and visitor management within specific areas. This is mostly to protect specific species or habitats, or even assist in the restoration of those environments. In Cyprus, we have a total of 20 marine protected areas of different levels. We have 6 marine protected areas with artificial reefs. We have 6 protected areas based on fisheries law and regulations. We have 1 SPAMI, which is specially protected areas of Mediterranean importance. And then we have 7 Natura 2000 sites. One of these Natura sites is an offshore, and 6 of them are coastal. Lastly, we have 1 underwater seamount, Eratosthenes, which is not a marine protected area, but it has fishing restrictions within it. So I'm going to start off with the 6 marine protected areas that are based on fisheries law and regulations. We have 3 marine protected areas, the MPA of Banya, which was created in 2017 and is in Paphos. We have Cabo Greco, which was created in 2018, and Gagoskal, which was created in 2019. All 3 of these areas were created for the protection of fisheries resources, and aquatic organisms. 2 of these areas, Cabo Greco and Gagoskali, also have different levels of zonation. Cabo Greco has 3 zonations, and Gagoskali has 2. In the bottom picture on the right side of the presentation, we can actually see the area of Gagoskali. The red zone is the core, and then the outside zone with green, that's the buffer zone. For anyone that wants to learn more about the legislation for each of these areas and what is allowed, as well as get the coordinates of these areas, they can look at the CRID, which you can see each number at the bottom of each of the boxes on the left side of the map. The MPA of Beja was created in 2019, Halavro 2021, and Ayos Georgios Alamanu in 2022. As with the other marine protected areas, these do protect fisheries resources and aquatic organisms, but they were more created for the protection of the Mediterranean monk seal, Monachus monachus. Some good news. The status of the Mediterranean monk seal actually changed in June of 2023 from endangered to vulnerable, and Cyprus had an impact into this change. Due to the protection that we've raised for the Mediterranean monk seal, we have allowed the population to increase to a level in collaboration with other countries to change its status. If you want to learn more about the Mediterranean monk seal, where it lives, the habitats, where it feeds, and its classification, you can actually use the link at the bottom of this slide so you can learn more. Then we have the area SPAMI, which is specially protected areas of Mediterranean importance. This is Lara toxephthora, which was created in 1989. It was created as a reserve for loggerhead and green turtles. And for those who don't know, Cyprus is actually the only European country in the Mediterranean where the green turtle, Hilonidias midas, actually breeds in, and it's of high importance that we protect this area. Actually, so I think, if I'm not wrong, Cyprus has had the highest growth of the green turtle in the Mediterranean. Then we the Eratosthenes seamount. As I mentioned, it is not a marine protected area, but it is a fisheries restricted zone. It is found 95 kilometers south of Cyprus, and the peak of the mountain is found at a depth of about 700 meters, while the base of the mountain is found at about 200 meters. Then we have the Natura 2000 sites. All 7 of these marine protected areas are part of the largest network of protected areas across Europe. They were created because of an identified vulnerable species or habitat. And the philosophy of the Natura 2000 sites is the coexistence of man with nature. So it's not the prevention of man entering the the natural ecosystem is more of how humans can interact with the natural ecosystem and get as much out of these areas as possible without actually harming the environment. We also have the one offshore Natura 2000 site, which is Okeanis. It's actually the largest marine protected area that we have. It was created in 2021, and it was actually created to protect the migratory paths of sea turtles, as well as the protection of different species of marine mammals. This was created after a number of researches that was conducted by the Department of Fisheries, which looked at the cataloging of different sea turtles in the whole of Cyprus, and also a research that was conducted by the DFMR in 2016 and 2017, which was looking at the presence and the species of different marine mammals in Cyprus. If you look at the right side of the presentation, that's different acoustic tags, different acoustic recordings of different species of marine mammals. For this research, they were we identified bottlenose dolphins, rhesus dolphins, rough-toothed dolphins, striped dolphins, sperm whales, and although it is not here, it's also presence of cuvier-beaked whales in Cyprus. On the left side of the presentation, we can actually see the cataloging of different individuals of sea turtles across Cyprus, and we can see that on the left side of Cyprus, on the west coast, there's actually a lot more sea turtles, and also there's a lot more marine mammal presence. Now moving into the marine protected areas with artificial reefs. As I mentioned, there's 6 MPAs. All 6 of these MPAs have fisheries restrictions at different levels. The first marine protected area with artificial reefs in Cyprus, it was created in 2009, and it was the MPA of Amathous. It incorporates a number of structures in the deep end of the MPA. However, there is the old Amathous harbor that is incorporated within the MPA and actually attracts a lot of different species of marine organisms. It's quite accessible to the public. It's only it's very close to the shore, and it's a depth maximum of 5 meters. So if anyone wants to visit, there's also an application for the Amathous harbor that one can download on their phone and get a lot more information if you're interested. So Amathous, in contrast with the other marine protected areas with artificial reefs, it has 2 zonations. On the south part of the MPA, so the shallow part of the MPA, there is prohibition of all fishing activities, both commercial and recreational, while on the north part. While on the south part, there's fishing is allowed, but only for individuals that have commercial license of categories A and B. There's also fishing restrictions within the marine protected area, where all boats are prohibited from entering unless they're boats that belong to the authorities of Cyprus, or dive boats that have a specific target within the marine protected area for a dive. Then we have the marine protected area of Paralimni. This area has it's the area with the second most number of structures that we have. It also has a fishing prohibition of all activities, and it was created in 2013. It's important to note that all our marine protected areas with artificial reefs reach from the coast up to different depths. The maximum depth that we have is about 50 meters of depth. They're quite small areas, so they're quite easy to monitor and survey. Then we have the marine protected area of Vasudi. This was created in 2014. This is the area with the most structures. It has fishing prohibitions throughout the area, both commercial and recreational. It has a prohibition of boat passage through the area. However, it is the only area that has a corridor which goes from one side of the MPA to the other. This allows for the crossing of the MPA with boats, jet skis, and so on, without actually disturbing the whole of the area. The only boats that can enter the MPA outside of these corridors are boats that belong to Cypriot authorities, dive boats, and also in this area we also have safety boats that belong to the Cyprus Sailing Federation, because there's a number of sailing communities within that area. Then we have the MPA of Euroskipu. As with the Sudi, this was created in 2014. It has prohibition of fishing activities, but in contrast with the other areas, you only have vessel regulations, restrictions, 150 meters around the submerged vessel Lapoe. In contrast with the other areas, this MPA hasn't actually attracted that many fish. However, it has attracted a lot of a high number of corals, which you can actually find on the ceiling of Lapoe. So you can see the corals here in the picture in the center of the presentation. Then we have the MPA of Ayanapa. This was created in 2015. It has two different types of structures. We have the submerged vessel Gerinia, which is in deeper waters, but we also have the underwater museum Musan, which is quite accessible both by boat, but also by shore. And there's actually ways that you can enter the water safely, and the maximum depth is only 10 meters. So you can actually visit through diving, snorkeling, or even free diving. There's fishing prohibitions within these areas as well, where both commercial and recreational fishing is prohibited. And there is some vessel passage regulations. So boats cannot pass 150 meters around the submerged vessel Gerinia, and also over the underwater museum Musan. This is mostly for safety reasons. Lastly, we have the MPA of Larnaca, which was created in 2019. Here we currently only have two submerged structures, and they're both ships. We have the shipwreck Elpida, which is found at a depth of about 27 meters. And it's also the largest submerged vessel that we have in the marine protected areas with artificial reefs. It's about 70 meters in length. And very recently, we've actually deployed about 200 amphoras in the Elpida with the collaboration of tourism boards in Larnaca and different dive centers that want to help with the enrichment of the area. As with before, we have fishing restrictions, and also you're not allowed to pass over the submerged vessels by boat for about 200 meters around the two ships, the Elpida and Left 1. Left 1 is actually found quite shallow into the MPA, about 10 meters depth. Now, as to what artificial reefs are. Artificial reefs are man-made structures that mimic certain characteristics of physical environments. We usually place artificial reefs in an environment that is suboptimal, so it's not that rich in its habitat, and this then usually starts building up into the environment. So artificial reefs provide shelter, they provide food and areas of reproduction for different species. Over time, this builds up the marine life within the area, and it can support fishermen as well as attract diving tourism. Sorry. You can think of the MPA as a fish farm. So which in our case, we have no take zones, so no one can fish within these MPAs. This means that the fish and the marine organisms, not just fish, they're protected in order to grow into a larger size, in order to breed, and we can also protect different stages of the life cycle so that they can continue this feedback into the cycle. So they grow, they breed, they feed, and they repeat. Over time, because the areas are quite small, and they can only support a number of individuals within those areas, the area reaches a threshold. So it can only support, for example, 100 individuals of that specific species. Over time, because they have nowhere else to go, they start moving outside of this area. This is where the fishermen then come into play, where they can fish them, sell them, and then support the ecosystem, support the system, and it keeps going into this feedback loop. The purpose of marine protected areas in Cyprus were created mainly to increase fish stocks and improve fishery production, as well as for conservation and the protection of marine biodiversity, so the protection of specific individuals or specific habitats. As with anything else, there's a number of secondary feedback within these structures. They provide secondary purposes. The first one is environmental education, where we have university students and students from different schools that are interested to learn more about the environment, and we create different and educational programs. Students they can come into the area and design their own project, their own thesis. We also go to different schools or different events, and we explain to students, not just students, but to the general public, what why the marine environment is important, how they can help, and how this will also help them in the future. We have a lot of public engagement where we create fresh snorkeling tours. We haven't actually managed to do any diving tours. Up to this point, we've done a lot of snorkeling tours where the public learns more about the environment. Once they stop fearing the environment, they start understanding it, they care more. We also have a lot of interactions with different dive centers and the diving community, and also tourism boards across Cyprus, where they help and we also help them in different events. The latest one, as I mentioned, was in December of 2023, where we deployed 204 us into the MPA. This makes the dive centers and everyone else that was involved to feel that the area is there, so that they cannot want to improve, want to invest in the area. They want to protect them. Once they put their own effort into it, they start feeling that this is something that we need to protect. It's also nice. It's nice for the different dive centers and the instructors to be able to tell to tourists and to people that dive within Cyprus that they've assisted in the creation of this, and over time build into a more healthy ecosystem for Cyprus. There's development of different marine activities, whether that's swimming or diving. People like to dive within MPAs because it's safer. They see organisms that they cannot see anywhere else. They can also see bigger organisms. There's also, based on where you dive, they can have different diving tours and so on. And lastly, within these areas, there's a lot of scientific research and monitoring that is going on, not just for the MPA, but also for different species. We have universities both within Cyprus and outside of Cyprus, as well as different NGOs that are interested to looking at specific parts of the MPA or help restore different parts. And over time, this builds and creates, and it's good for the MPA, it's good for the people, and we also gain a lot of knowledge about the environment and what we have within that environment. So yeah, so that's me. If anyone has any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Magdalene. That was very interesting and very elaborate and very thorough presentation.
I tried to push everything into 20 minutes.
Yes, exactly. There's so many things and they keep on changing. I think last year they declared like 3 new MPAs. So Cyprus is actually catching up with the protection of these areas, and they're getting a bit faster with the decrees that they're issuing as well. So we
there's
do
more
have one.
coming.
There's
There's
more
more
coming.
coming. There's
But
the new strategies.
communities also have to be included. They have to
Yes.
also put the effort to protect them, but also to manage them as well. I think that's the key. When the people are involved, as you said, they learn to appreciate more and start loving the places that they live. I mean, some things are prohibited, but other things that they can be done in a sustainable way. So
Yes.
this is what actually both you and the FMR is promoting through your
With
actions.
different people, it's not just the DFMR. We have collaborations, and different NGOs are also pushing this. So it's good to see.
Bravo, bravo, Magda. Thank you so much. We have one question so far. While Magda will be answering this question, you can write your own down.
Yeah,
There's this
just one.
question that says, what would you advise to do with all those boats roaming Agamas Peninsula over Kakoskali Marine Protected Area? How people can help? That's a very good question.
So we're in the process. I don't know about the natural thousand sites because they're not under my control. I'm not one of the managers. But I know that generally the DFMR is looking into moving into more management plans, so strategies of what is allowed, what isn't allowed. For example, within marine protected areas, you can actually set the speed of the boats, where they can go. They can only pass through certain areas. I don't know what they have in mind for Kagoskali, for example, but there is a number of things that one can do to help this. But we are in the process of creating management plans to make this more regulated.
How can the people or the tourists or the sea professional get informed on how to actually treat these areas that they may pass?
So there's so if you go into the DFMR, there's a KMZ file with all the marine protected areas that one can actually download. It's free to download and it goes directly into Google Earth. There's a lot more information in that, and there's also the coordinates. If you look at the CRIT, so the number, the legislation at the bottom of each of the presentations, which we can share, you can find more information about each of the areas. There's also a lot more information about the different areas for the MPAs with artificial reefs in the DFMR. There's also a lot more information about what is allowed and what is not allowed for the Naturas and so on, both in our website but also in the Department of Environment's website. So there's a lot of areas that one can look into to get all the information that they want.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's your favorite MPA and why?
I actually don't have a favorite MPA because based on where you go, there's different things to see. So, for example, for me, the area that has the most organisms, the most species, and the most things that you can see is Tasudi. But it's also because it's in the center of the city. There's a lot more monitoring. There's a lot of people actually calling into the department saying there is an illegal activity within the MPA, and it's quite easy for us to actually access at a very fast pace. So it's working faster compared to others. There's also a lot of assistants from different lifeguards that are permanently there, and they know more about what is allowed and what is not allowed. So it's easier. But for me, we get the most species, especially fish, and that goes to at least the two shipwrecks, with Kosandis having the most fish for me, anyways. There's others that disagree. However, Amathunda, the old harbor, which is quite shallow, it's easily accessible, gets a lot more swimmers and a lot more youngsters. And there we also have a permanent population of stingrays now. There's most of the times that you go there, especially during the summer periods and around lunchtime, you will always see a turtle, and there's different sizes of turtles. You will always get to see schools of fish. There's sea urchins, and we can also find there our endemic sea urchin as well, not just the diadema. You don't get to see a lot of diademas within the harbor. You also don't get to, we only have, the last times we went, we've only found one lionfish compared to other areas. However, the deeper side of the Amathus gets a lot of lionfish and not a lot of anything else. Amathunda also gets a lot more Posidonia, and it's rich in Posidonia. So it depends. So Baffles doesn't have a lot of fish, but it does have corals. So it depends on what you're looking into. And then Larnaca has the biggest vessel, which is the plan for the near future is to actually enrich Larnaca as well as 3 other MPAs, so that we're in the process of moving that along. Yeah, and Paralimni gets a lot more, I think gets a lot more benthic species. Ayernaba has the Musan, so it's a completely different thing. You go there for the experience. It depends on what each one is interested in looking and how comfortable they are diving, how comfortable they are swimming. So it also depends on the level of diver or swimmer that you are.
Yeah, there's one for every preference, I
Yeah,
believe. So
yeah. It's not the primary purpose of the MPAs, but it's a good thing. It's a good objective.
we have one more question from Carlos Jimenez. He says, thank you for the nice presentation. How can we protect deep sea MPAs? Logistically, it's complicated, correct?
Deep sea MPAs. Deep sea MPAs are they require a lot of discussion because they're also quite far out. There's not that much surveillance within the MPAs. Bigger boats do need to have a GPS locator, so but it has to be from our country. If it's from a different country, then we can't really do much. In the best thing that we could do is apply fisheries restriction, but it's quite hard to control. It's quite hard to control in the coastal areas, very much less in the deep sea, which is far away. Yeah.
Does the Coast Guard help with the control or with the monitoring of illegal activities?
So marine police does help, but with all the refugees and all the illegal boats that are coming in, they're quite busy, to say the least. So whenever they can, whenever they have free patrols, they do assist. But we also have our own patrols, as the department has. We have our own boats. We have our own people that go through the MPAs. But we're also short staffed, and we only have a number of boats.
Yes,
So
true. And it all comes down to money at the end of the day.
yes, and also we've actually we now have park rangers. So they're also doing their part, but they're mostly from the coast. So once they see someone in the water, they call the boats, they go in and they record them, they give their fines and so on. But again, we have 20 marine protected areas across Cyprus. We don't have many people. Um, Actually, the public helps a lot. We have a lot of calls coming in saying there's an illegal activity, there's an illegal fishing. We see people diving with bottles and spear fishing, which is not allowed in any area, anyways. So yeah.
Is there like a hotline that people can contact or
So if you
to
call the
communicate
DFMR,
with?
it's not
Hmm?
a hotline, but if you contact the DFMR and say I have an illegal activity, they will either record it themselves or connect you to someone within the department that is more that can do more.
Yeah. So we have one more from Milanda Jungwirth. What can citizens do to raise awareness to certain areas that are not specifically classified as a marine protected area, but it is known for its marine life? For example, Protaras Green Bay. Very good question.
Okay. You can raise awareness through social media. You can also, if there's an area that you believe should be a marine protected area for a specific reason or anything else, if you have enough agents or enough people to support this, then you can also contact the DFMR and we can see what we can do, especially if you have the support of the local communities. For example, the MPA of Banya, it was created with a lot of help from the people. And there's also created swimming parks as well there. So if people care, then we can do more. The problem is when we don't have support of the people and we have the environment that we need to protect.
Yes. There's one more question. Clear this for me, please. We can swim on MPAs and we don't make any harm to the environment, right? There has to be also like a behavior that a contact that we have that it's like near logic, correct?
So
But
yeah, so
swimming is not forbidden.
swimming is not forbidden in any of the MPAs. You also don't need permission to swim or dive within any of the MPAs. You do need permission to dive at night, however. And that's more to do with easier surveillance of the areas and for protection. But swimming is not it's not prohibited. There is different methods of swimming and diving that you can actually protect the environment, like don't grab the seabed or the vessels that have organisms on them. Do not remove things. If you can, don't flat kick. If you can, do frog kicks, especially if there's organisms near you or if you're very close to the seabed. Don't chase after marine organisms. So if you see a turtle or a seal or anything like that, don't go chasing after them. It's if you stay where you are and they're interested, they will come around and see what you're doing. Yeah, and also don't feed them. It's nice because you attract them towards you, but you change their behavior, you change their feeding, their diet. Also, there were a few incidences in Paphos where they were feeding sea turtles, and the turtles learned that they want food. So when tourists that didn't have food entered the water, especially in Banya, they would bite the tourists, especially where the locals or whoever was feeding them, for example, they had hanging food from their belts. So the turtle learned that's where their food is, so they would just go and bite the tourists trying to get food. So yeah.
Great, thank you. And Becky Z wonders, maybe she missed where we can find all the info for the MPAs online. If you can repeat that, Magdalene.
Yeah, you can go into the DFMR website, where on the left side of the page there's a section just for legislations. If you write the CREED number, which is on the presentations, or even easier, if you just write the name of the MPA. For example, if you write Protaras or Paralimni or Ayanaba, it will highlight, if you control F, and it will highlight the CREED, and then you can go in and download it and so on. To make it easier, we also have posters outside each of the MPAs that shows the map. It explains clearly what is allowed and what is not allowed. It also shows the different types of structures that are within the MPA. So yeah, there's a number of different places you can find information.
Yeah, and the MPA Navigator is a pretty good tool that shows them on the map as well. They're not all included. It hasn't been updated with the new ones, with the three latest ones.
If you go to the FMR website and you go to the marine protected areas, there's the KMZ file you can download, and it has all the MPAs. It's been updated quite recently, and it goes directly into the Google Earth. And there's if you click on the for more information, it also has a lot more information about the MPAs.
Perfect. Thank you. If you have any other questions, I will allow like a few seconds to write your questions down, or if you have a remark to make. What I would like to say is that MPAs are very important for the protection, but also the conservation, because you can't have a resource unless you manage it first. It's like a business. If you want it to grow, you have to sow the seed, and then you have to harvest it, but not too much so you don't have a crop to grow, but enough to let it grow more. So it's the same principle for everything. And we've been blessed in Cyprus. We have also monuments. We also have the activities that vessels have been sunk or artificial reefs have been created, and this gave an opportunity for some areas to recover or to actually gain life where there wasn't any. So it's like creating a new landscape or a new ecosystem within the Cyprus Sea. So it's amazing. And those who can visit, they should, but always be aware that you're in their home. So act accordingly. Yes, don't touch, don't feed. I've seen in Instagram advertisements where they say, come and feed the turtles with us. So they're even advertising to gain money. So please do not do that. Don't pay to do that. First of all, we have germs and microbes and diseases that we can share with these animals. And second, as Magdalene said, we're changing their behavior. And then that leads for them to be more comfortable around humans. And eventually they might bite us because they're animals. They're still animals. They're cute, but still
From afar.
animals. Yes, from afar.
Also,
Uh,
something that was not
mhm.
mentioned, actually Cyprus has a very unique ecosystem that scientists from all across the world actually want to come and study. So we should be blessed that we have this there on our doorsteps, and we should go out more and explore more. So yeah,
Yeah, and by telling people, by communicating what you learn here and in webinars and from other things that you might learn, communicating them with other people, this is how it goes. It's the bottom to top approach. You talk to other people and they talk about it, and then you come to a certain amount of people that they are aware of a situation, a problem, or a specific behavior conduct that we have to have around these areas. And it's good for us to know because many of us, we don't know where they are and we may not know how to behave. For example, in the sea caves that monk seals are, we've seen many tourists entering the sea caves, stepping on the vermedids, having the time of their life. And I understand that they are not aware. So it's our duty as well to make them aware of the situation that it is. Thank you so much, Magda. Thank you everyone for being here.
thank you.
Please follow us on social media and our YouTube channel that we will soon upload all the webinars, all the series, and stay updated about all the exciting news about marine life in Cyprus. So thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.